Arabian and Scotia. And as you can see, they all fit together. Is filled by magma that rises from the asthenosphere. The magma cools and solidifies to create new oceanic lithosphere. The evolution of a divergent plate boundary has 3 stages. The first one is the birth of a divergent boundary, and this is happening today in East Africa. It is also known as East African Rift Zone. Eventually, the gap will form a narrow ocean, which is the second stage. Ito yung tinatawag na Youth Ocean, katulad ng Red Sea, to the north of the East African Rift Zone. A similar narrow sea is the Gulf of California. Lies between Mexico and Baja California. As you can see, the plates are moving away from each other. So the last stage is to form a mature ocean. And it takes millions of years to form it. As the rate of the plate motions are slow from 10 to 100 mm per year, at ang pinakamatandang oceanic crust ay nasa Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. And same age ito na, of 180 million years. But the Pacific is much wider than the Atlantic because it is spreading 2 to 3 times as fast. Pakitandaan din natin that divergent plate boundary occurs when 2 plates are moving away from each other, and it creates a zone of tension. So, what are the geologic features formed? So, we have oceanic ridges and rift valleys. Again, what is the movement of a divergent boundary? So, using your hand snack, gawin nyo ang nasa picture. Galing yan sa magkadikit hanggang sa palayo na sa isa't isa. Again, the relative motion is moving away from each other. At ipapakita ko sa inyo ang simulation kung paano nangyayari ang paghihiwalay ng mga plates. So, meron tayo ditong simulation app. At ang pipiliin natin ay ang manual mode. So, maglagay na po tayo ng dalawang continental crust. Ayan po. Pwede po nating makita ang temperature nito, maging ang density at ang labels. Ayan po. So, ititik lang po natin yung boxes. At pwede na po tayong mag-start. Ayan po. Pagmasdan nyo po ng maigi, anak. Ayan. As you can see, after 9 million years, nagkaroon na ng bagong young oceanic crust. Kaya sana, malinaw po sa inyo kung paano at ano ang nangyayari once na nagda-diverge ang plates. Ang next natin ay ang transform plate boundary, which is conservative. So kung kanina, sa divergent plate boundary, ang movement nila ay palaging palayo sa isa't isa, dito naman ay nag-i-slide lang from one another. They do not destroy or create land. Again, transform plate boundary occurs when two plates are neither spreading apart nor colliding with each other. So plates are sliding or grinding past each other. The famous example is San Andreas Fault of California. This is the picture of San Andreas Fault. Always remember that when the plates move past one another, they create earthquakes. So, transform boundary is a fault along a plate boundary where the motion is predominantly horizontal. Two plates are sliding past each other. This forms a transform plate boundary. Like the nuts and bolts that hold massive structures together, transform plate boundaries are the underappreciated members of the plate tectonics machine. New lithosphere is not created at transform boundaries, neither is old lithosphere destroyed. Consequently, these boundaries are sometimes termed conservative plate boundaries. Again, anak, plates slide past their neighbors like traffic on a two-way street moving in opposite but parallel directions. So there are three types of transform plate boundaries. The first one is the ridge-to-ridge boundaries. A mid-ocean ridge or mid-oceanic ridge is an underwater mountain range. Formed by what? Formed by plate tectonics. This uplifting of the ocean floor occurs when convection currents rise in the mantle beneath the oceanic crust and create magma, where two tectonic plates meet at a divergent boundary. The second one is the trench-to-trench boundaries. We all know that trenches are formed by a subduction, meaning bending of the crust towards the mantle. Trenches are geophysical processes in which two or more of Earth's tectonic plates converge, and the older, denser plate is pushed beneath the lighter plate and deep into the mantle. That can cause the seafloor and outermost crust to bend and form a steep, V-shaped depression. The third type of transform boundary is the ridge-to-trench boundaries. Trench is a deep, elongated cavity bordering a continent or an island arc. It forms when one tectonic plate slides beneath another. Ridge is an underwater mountain range that crisscrosses the oceans and is formed by rising magma in a zone where two plates are moving apart. Again, what are the three types of transform plate boundaries? So we have ridge-to-ridge boundaries, trench-to-trench boundaries, and the last one is ridge-to-trench boundaries. So what is the movement of transform boundary? Using your hands, nak, gayahin ang nasa picture kung paano ang movement ng transform boundaries. Again, the plates are sliding or grinding past each other. At ipapakita ko sa inyo ang simulation kung ano at paano nangyayari ang pag-slide ng plates sa isa't isa. Simulan na natin, nak. So, i-click lang po natin ang automatic mode. Ayan po. And then, click na natin tong mga boxes. So, ganyan ang nangyayari, nak, after 25 million years. At sana, mas naiintindihan nyo ang concept ng itinuturo ko sa inyo gamit ang simulation na to. The last type of plate boundaries, nak, ay ang Convergent Plate Boundary, which is destructive. Convergent Plate Boundary, where two tectonic plates collide towards each other. One plate eventually slides beneath the other. This process is called subduction. Converging oceanic plates will cause formation of trenches, and these trenches will become sources of earthquakes. The leading edge of the subducted plate will eventually reach the mantle, causing it to melt and turn into magma. The molten material will rise to the surface, creating a volcanic island arc, parallel to the trench. Volcanic island is a chain of volcanoes positioned in an arc shape. Convergent plate boundary occurs when two plates are moving toward each other, and the plates are colliding with one another. Again, anak, subduction is the process by which two plates collide, and one plate is drawn underneath the other. Always remember that convergent plates are destroyed when one goes underneath the other. Kung ang transform plate boundaries ay mayroong 3 types, meron din po ang convergent plate boundaries. Ano-ano po yon? Meron po tayong oceanic to continental, oceanic-oceanic, and continent to continent. So let me discuss first the oceanic to continental. When oceanic lithosphere and continental lithosphere collide, the dense oceanic lithosphere subducts beneath the less dense continental lithosphere. An accretionary wedge forms on the continental crust as deep sea sediments, and oceanic crusts are scraped from the oceanic plate. So when oceanic lithosphere collides with continental lithosphere, the oceanic plate will descend into the subduction zone. Why do you think so, anak? Because oceanic lithosphere is denser o mas mabigat kaysa sa continental lithosphere and is therefore consumed preferentially. Continental lithosphere is almost never destroyed in subduction zones. As you can see, volcanoes found along the Ring of Fire, where active volcanoes are found because of subducting plates melting and becoming magma for volcanoes. The next type, anak, ng convergent plate boundaries ay ang oceanic to oceanic. So ito na yung pagtatagpo ng dalawang oceanic lithosphere. The older of the two plates descends into the subduction zone when plates of oceanic lithosphere collide along a trench. The descending plate carries water-filled sediments from the ocean floor downward into the mantle. The presence of water alters the physical and chemical conditions necessary for melting and causes magma to form. The magma rises up through the overriding oceanic plate, reaching the surface as a volcano. As the volcano grows, it may rise above sea level to form an island. Trenches often lie adjacent to chains of islands or island arcs formed by magma from the subducted plate. Best example is the Mariana Trench. It is located in the western Pacific Ocean. And we have the chain of volcanic islands. This is an underwater volcanoes form new land masses. The third type of convergent plate boundaries is continental to continental. So when two plates collide, they have a density lower than the mantle, which prevents subduction or the submersion of plates under each other. So they create mountains, such as the world-famous Himalaya mountain range. This is the tallest mountains in the world and continue to grow as a result of continental collision. Tandaan lang po natin, anak, na magkakaroon ng mountains like Himalayan mountains kapag nagtagpo ang mga plates. Inuulit ko, pagtatagpo ng dalawang continental plates. Okay po? The Himalayan mountains mark the boundary between the Indian and Eurasian plates. The collision of plates began over 40 million years ago when India smashed into the belly of Asia. Continental lithosphere is relatively light and is deformed adjacent to subduction zones rather than consumed. So we have the Himalayas in India. The two plates collided and pushed one plate up to create the mountains. So what is the movement of convergent boundary? This is when two plates are colliding with one another. At ipapakita ko po sa inyo mga anak kung paano ang movement ng convergent boundary. Gamit ulit ang ating simulation app. So piliin po natin ang automatic mode. Masasabi natin na converging plate boundaries ito kapag nagko-collide ito sa isa't isa. At ipapakita ko po sa inyo ang movement ng continental crust to continental, oceanic to oceanic, and oceanic to continental plate boundaries. Okay po? So, please observe. So, mag-summary tayo ngayon na. Ano ulit ang three types ng plate boundaries? Ayan, meron tayong divergent plate boundary na kung saan ang movement ng plates ay moving apart from each other o palayo sa isa't isa. So parang katulad ng mga may pinagtagpo pero hindi tinadhana, kaya naghiwalay. At ang tinutukoy ko ay ang mga plates. Huwag yung iniisip mo ha, pero pwede na rin. Ang sunod naman ay ang convergent plate boundaries, wherein two plates are colliding to each other. Ito yung parang love life mo, di ba? Ito yung di mo inaasahan pero pinagtagpo kayo. Di ba kinikilig ka na? At ang huli naman ay ang transform plate boundary. It occurs when two plates are sliding or grinding from each other. Ayan, ito na talaga yung matindi. Kasi kung napakinggan niyo yung kanta ni Moira na Paubaya, nandun yung sinabi niya na mahirap kalabanin ang itinadhana. Dito naman sa transform fault boundary, ito naman yung mga kahit anong pilit mo or kahit pilitin man natin, hindi talaga magtatagpo at hindi din maghiwalay. So bago magtapos ang video lesson natin, please take note that all these types of plate boundaries have subsequent effect which is earthquake. So hanggang sa muli anak, huwag niyong kakalimutan na i-like ang video na ito at ibahagi sa mga kaklase ninyo. Mag-subscribe na rin kayo at i-click nyo ang notification bell para ma-notify kayo sa mga susunod na i-upload kong videos. Maraming salamat sa panunood. Naway may natutunan ka sa lesson video na ito. Mag-iingat po tayo palagi.